Well, hello Internet, and welcome to my JavaScript video tutorial. In this one tutorial, I'm going to teach you pretty much everything you would learn in a standard 300-page book on JavaScript. And in the description underneath the video, I have links to all the individual parts so you can jump to specifically what you want to learn about. And also, I have the code. Everything down there is free. And I have a lot to do, so let's get into it. Okay, so on the left side of the screen, I have Sublime Text, and the name of the file is jstut.html. And I wrote a little bit of styling inside here and kept this all in one page just to keep everything very simple. And on the right side of the screen, I have Google Chrome running. Also, down here in the bottom of the screen, I have a little tool that's going to allow me to go in there and check my code. And you can open that up just by going over here and clicking on View, and then Developer, and then JavaScript Console, and that will open up the JavaScript console. Alright, so first thing I'm going to cover here is how we can import some JavaScript code directly in here and use that. Very simple. All we're going to do is come in and type script, and then source is equal to, and then let's say that I have a JavaScript file called jstut, and now what I'll be able to do is come in here and import any of the functions that are inside of this file inside of here and run them and keep my code and my screen overall very clean. So there that is. Now what I want to do is come in here and actually show you how you can interact with the user. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a paragraph tag, and I'm going to give it an ID of say hello like this, and this is sort of going to be an overview of a whole bunch of different things that we will then cover in more detail later on. Then I'm going to open up another script tag. Don't need any of this stuff right here. And then inside of it, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable that is going to store a name. And how I'm going to get the data to store inside of that variable is by opening a prompt on the screen. Now, this isn't something you would do all the time, but this is just a neat little example. Like I said, I'll give you more details as it comes up. And this is just going to open up a little prompt on the screen and, of course, ask them, what is your name? And then what I'm going to do is verify that they actually provided me a name. And what I'm saying here is if the name is not equal to null, null being empty. So I'm saying if they actually gave me a name, then I want to do something. What I want to do is I want to take the name and put a little message right here inside of my paragraph tags. To do so, I'm going to go document, and I need to get a hold of that element. And how I'm going to get a hold of that element is go get element by ID. And of course, the ID for this guy is say hello, just like it says right there. And then I want to put this inside of the HTML tags. To do that, you go enter HTML, and then I'm going to say something like hello space, and to concatenate or to combine the strings, I'm going to put a plus sign inside of there, and then I'm going to put your name. Now what I want to do is provide another condition, else if they did have a value of null for your name, which means that they didn't give me a name, I want to do something different. What I'm going to do here is open up an alert pop-up that says please enter a name next time. And there we go, got that all set up. Now if we save that, jump over here and reload our page, you're going to see right here it says what is your name. I'm going to say Derek, and I'm going to click on OK, and you're going to see over here it pops up inside of my paragraph tag, hello Derek. So pretty simple example, but it gives you an overview of a bunch of different things. So now let's jump over and talk a little bit more about variables. Now your variables are not going to be able to start with a number or contain spaces, but they can, of course, contain letters, numbers, underscores, or dollar signs. And remember, they are case sensitive, so if you have a variable named your name like that, it's going to be different than a variable called your name with a lowercase values. And as you just saw, you create these variables by just saying var, and then you give them a name, and then you assign a value to them. And it doesn't really matter what the data type is. We can come in here and go my age and assign that a value of 40, and we don't need to tell it what type of data type it is. It automatically figures that out itself. And also, because variables don't have a defined type, we can then come in here and do something like my name, exactly the same as above, where I have the string Derek. I can come in here and go and give it a value of 100, for example, and that's not going to cause an error. That's a quick overview of variables because they're pretty simple. So now let's take a little bit closer look at math functions. Now document write is going to allow us to write out to the browser right over here. And I can just come in here and let's do a little bit of math. We'll say something like 5 plus 4 is equal to, and then what we're going to be able to do is come in here and perform a calculation directly inside of our write function. And then if I want to put a new line inside of here, I would just go and throw a break statement in exactly like that. Why don't we also come in here and do another document write just to show you some different things that might cause errors. Let's say instead I would come in here and decide that I wanted to concatenate these guys by putting a plus sign inside of there. You might think that this guy right here is going to give me exactly the same value as this guy right here. Well, why don't we save it and reload and see if that's true? Well, we want to first come in here and throw in a script tag, of course, and then let's save that and reload it and see if that's true. Well, you can see right here that it isn't true. Why is that? Well, the reason why is right here where we use the comma, that is going to treat this as a mathematical function, while here where we have a plus, remember we can concatenate strings together, that's the concatenation operator, that instead is going to combine all these as if 5 and 4 were strings. So that's a common thing that throws some people, and now you understand it and you won't have a problem with it. Of course, we're also going to be able to come in here and perform all of the common mathematical operations. So we'll be able to come in, for example, and do some subtraction on this, and some multiplication, and some division, as well as modulus, which is going to give us the remainder of a division. And you can see all the different mathematical calculations we can perform that are built into JavaScript. Another thing that's important to understand is that there is a standard way to store numbers inside of JavaScript. So let's say we wanted to come in here and figure out what the maximum number we could hold inside of here would be. We're just going to do this, and we'll say something like max num. And to get the maximum number we can store inside of here, we would just go number and then max value. And we can also get the minimum value, so we might as well take a look at that. And you can see right there the maximum value that we could store inside of our JavaScript code, as well as the minimum value we could store inside of there. Now, when we talk about minimums and maximums, you might think, well, those are going to be 100% accurate, that large. Nah, not really. Basically, let's come in here and let's perform a precision test, and know that a number can only be precise up to 16 digits of precision, as you're going to see right here. So here we go, I have a value inside of here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add to this to see how the precision works out for us. So we'll save that, and you can see that this perfectly works fine. You can see these values add up to 2 and so forth and so on. But what would happen if we would come in here and say add another 0 and add another 0, file save, reload, and now you can see that everything gets a little bit messed up. So just understand that at any time you go over 16 digits of precision with your decimal values, that things are going to get messed up. And this isn't anything that's specific to JavaScript. This is true of pretty much every programming language. Another thing we want to do here is round some values. So say we have a customer that has a balance at our store, and we want to come in here and we want to print out that value, and we also want to verify or make sure that it comes out to 2 decimal places. Well, let's say that we want to set up something like a monthly payment for this customer so they can pay off their balance. Again, we're going to put a comma inside of there, and we're going to take their balance and we're going to divide that by 12, since it's going to be 12 months until they pay that off. If we then want to round this to 2 decimal places, we just go 2 fixed and then put a 2 inside of there like that. And you can see right there, to pay off that balance in 1 year, they would have to pay $130.32 per month. If you took the 2 fixed out of here, let's go and do that just so you can see what that looks like. You're going to see that it doesn't come out to 2 decimal places. So 2 fixed is another way for us to work or filter our numbers so that they make sense on the screen. Go and create another variable called rand number and give it a value of 5. There's all kinds of different shortcut ways we can work with our different values to perform common operations. Like, for example, let's say that we wanted to take a random number and increment it by 1. We could just go plus plus like this, but be aware there's 2 different ways that we can increment, and I'm going to show you both of them right now so that you won't be confused by them. And the other way to do said thing is to come in here and throw the plus plus before the random number. And basically what this is going to do is the guy above is going to come in here and print this out to the screen and then increment the value of random number. And here what this is going to do is it's going to increment the value of random number and then print it to the screen. If I reload it, you can see exactly that that is what it did. We're also going to be able to come in here and subtract 1 from the random number, and you can see exactly how those calculations work out for us. And also there are other shortcut ways to add 1 to a value and then store it back inside of itself. So let's just come back inside of here, document write, And we'll do something like random number. If we wanted to add 5 to random number and then store the result of that calculation back in the random number, this is how that's done. Random number plus equal to 5, and we can perform this calculation in multiple different ways. And if we reload that, you can see exactly how that works out. Another thing we can do, or one other thing we should pay attention to, is something called order of operations. And that just basically means that we're going to use parentheses to make sure the calculations are done in specific ways. So first we're going to do a calculation without using parentheses. And you're going to see, if we take 3 plus 2 times 5, that is going to provide us with different results than if we went in here and went 3 plus 2 and surround 3 plus 2 with parentheses, as well as right here, because normal order of operations says that we should multiply 2 times 5 and then add that to 3, but since we put the parentheses here, it's going to first add these, then multiply that times 5. And you can see there how that differs. Now there are numerous different properties and methods built into math libraries inside of JavaScript, so let's take a look at a couple of those. We would just access them, like let's say we wanted to get the value of the numerical constant e. What we would do is just do exactly what you see right here, and we could also come in and do the same thing with pi, two numbers that are built inside of JavaScript. And there you can see those numbers. And of course there are a ton of different methods that are built inside of JavaScript. And here is just a short list. We'll be able to come in and get the absolute value. We'll be able to come in and get the cube root. We'll be able to get a rounding to the ceiling, which means we're going to round up. A round to the floor, which means we're going to round down. A standard round, which means if it's 6.5, it's going to round up. If it's below 6.5, it's going to round down. We can get the natural logarithm. We can get the logarithm to the base of 10. We can get the max value of either one of these that is passed in. The minimum value, we can calculate the power as well as the square root and a whole bunch of other different calculations. Of course, there's cosine, sine, all those different things. And we can come over here and there you can see all those different calculations. And of course, you know how to round these down to different decimal places by using toFixed, which I just showed you a moment ago. Another thing that we can do is let's go and calculate some random values. Say we wanted a random number between 1 and 10. To calculate that, we would first, we're going to have to round it. So we're going to go math floor, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to call math and call the random function. Now if I want to get a value up to 10, I'm going to multiply this times 10, and then if I want to start at 1, by default it's going to start at 0. I'm going to add 1 to it like that. And if I reload this, you can see that it came out with a value of 3. And if I reload it multiple times, you'll see it's going to give us multiple different random values. And there we are. Another thing that's important to know is how to convert strings into numbers. And to convert a string into a number, we would just type in number like that, and then throw in an actual string value or a reference to a variable that contains a number or whatever you want inside of there. And that will convert a string into a number. Likewise, if we would want to come in here and convert a string into an int, we would then come in and go parse int, change this to 5, and then likewise we could do the same thing with a floating point number by instead typing in parse float. And if we reload that, you can see exactly how those work out. So there you go. That is a bunch of different math functions as well as how we can work with strings and numbers and a whole bunch of other different things. Now let's jump over and take a look at how we can work with strings. Now we're going to be able to come in and combine strings as you saw a moment. Let's just create a variable. Let's call it random string like this. And let's type in a long, and if we want to combine these strings, we use the plus sign, of course, like we saw before. And there you go, really long string. Now we're going to come in here and manipulate it in a whole bunch of different ways. Let's say we wanted to come in here and get the string length. Let's go string length, and then outside of this, we could do random string, and then just call length, which is exactly what you would pretty much think it would be. And you can see that it gets you the total length of that string, which is 33. Let's say that we also wanted to come in and get the index for the word goes. Another thing I want to cover is if you wanted to put double quotes inside of here, you have to put backslash and double quote. And then we could say something like goes and then another one, and that's going to allow us to put double quotes inside of this string because this is the start, and if you put this here, it's not going to get confused otherwise unless you use those backslashes. So we're going to go index for goes, and then to get that index or the character number for the location of the word goes, we just go random string and then say index of, and then we'll just type in whatever we're looking for. So there's the word goes like that, and then close off that function. and reload it, and you can see that it starts at the 19th character inside of our string. Let's say we want to return a value starting at a specific index. When I say index, I just mean which character in the string. So this is the 0 index. This space here is the index of 1. This is the index of 2. This is the index of 3. So that's what I mean when I talk about index. Let's come in and get just part of our string, and we're going to do that with slice. So we went in here and we found out that goes starts at the 19th position. So we're going to slice that out. We're going to type in 19. And then we're going to say what index we want to stop at, and that's going to be the 23rd. And we'll see exactly what that looks like in a moment, because we're going to do another slice. And with this guy, well, actually, let's come in here and get rid of that, get rid of that. There we go, much better. Another way we can do a slice is to go random string, slice, and let's say that we just want to get from the 19th value to the end of the string. Well, that's how that's done. And we can also come in and use a similar tool, and this is the substring tool, random string. And the only difference between this guy is this is going to allow us to define not the index, but an actual length. So for example, let's say we wanted to come in, start at the 19th index, and get everything 4 characters forward from that point. That's exactly how that would be done. And reload it, you can see it grabs goes in the second situation, which is this guy right here. It's going to grab goes and the rest of the string. And here is another way that we can grab goes by defining the length of the word that we want to get a hold of. We could also come in here and replace part of a string with something else. So we can go random string like this and call replace. And let's say that we wanted to come in here and replace the words and on with the word forever. And you can see now the string is now a long string that goes on forever. We could also come in and get a specific character at an index. So let's say at index 2, and we want to print out exactly what is at index 2. We would go random string like this, and then we would just say a character at, and of course we're going to put index 2 inside of there. We could also split a string into an array. We would do that just by going random string and split, and then if we wanted to split everything at all the spaces between the words, we would just put that there. If there were commas between the words, we would just put that like that, whatever. And we could also come in and trim any white space off of the beginning or the end of our string just by going random string and calling the trim function, and that will handle that for us. And then there's also 2 built-in ways to convert a string to all uppercase letters and as well to all lowercase letters. And you can see all those different guys there on our screen. Another thing we can do is we can style our strings using JavaScript in numerous different ways, but here I'm going to show you a very specific way. To do this, I'm going to create another variable. I'm going to call this string to style. And you're going to see that I'm going to be able to output this random string in numerous different ways inside of the browser. And basically what's going on here is I'm going to be outputting this string, random string right here, onto the browser window, and I'm going to be surrounding it with different tags. So I'm going to surround it with the big tag, the bold tag. I'm going to change the font color here, the font size. I'm going to make it italics. I can give it a link. I can use the small tag, the strike tag, the sub, and the sup. And if we reload this, you're going to see all the different ways we can style our strings right there on the screen pretty easily. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of different ways we can mess around with strings. Now let's go and take a look at conditionals. Okay, so there are multiple different relational operators, and this is going to be different ways that we can compare values and then perform different or execute different amounts of code depending upon certain conditions. That's the whole point of conditionals. Now there is equal to, there is not equal to, there is greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. But for the most part, what you're going to use instead of equal to is 1, 2, 3 equal signs. And the difference here is whenever you just use 2 equal signs, that is just going to verify that the values are equal. When you use 3, that is going to verify that the value of a variable as well as the type of the variable are going to be equal. So for the most part, you're just going to use these equal signs. Another thing we can use are logical operators, and those are and, or, as well as not. And why don't we just go in here and start using these guys so that they make a little bit more sense. And how we're going to do that is I'm going to create a variable called age, give it a value of 8, and now we're going to get back into if statements. And this is just saying if the age value is greater than or equal to 5, and both of these are going to have to be true for us to be able to come in here and perform the calculations that come after this. Age is less than or equal to 6. Then we're going to perform all of the code between these two curly brackets that we have right here. And what we're going to do in this situation is say go to kindergarten, else, and here we're going to throw in another condition. If age is greater than 18, then we're going to execute different code. And in this situation, we're going to say go to college. And then as a final condition, which is going to always be true if the first two conditions are false, we're going to say else, and we're going to say go to grade. And then let's perform a calculation inside of here, and we're just going to take the age minus 5. And now what we'll be able to do is reload this, and you're going to see go to grade 3 pops up. If we would then come in and change this to 5, we could reload and see the go to kindergarten pops up, and so forth and so on. Just to demonstrate the other different logical operators, we could also come in here, and if we give a value of true or false, this is going to show you how that works. What OR is going to do is return a true if either this value over here or this value over here is true. Let's also take a look at exactly what not does. What not does is just converts whatever this guy is into the opposite. So it's going to convert the trues into falses and the falses into trues. We'll just go not true like that. And why don't we come in here and demonstrate the different ways that equals works inside of JavaScript, because this confuses a couple people. So here what we're going to do is we're going to use a string of 5 like that, and we'll just use 2 double equal signs is equal to. And then we'll put this in between parentheses so that we don't cause confusion. Double equal sign and 5. And then down here, we'll do exactly the same thing, but instead we'll use 3 equal signs. And save it and reload it, and you can see right here that this comes back as true because there is one true inside of there. Not true equals false, and you can see here when we use double equal signs that that's going to come back as true even though this is a string and this is a number. While this guy down here comes back as false because the values as well as the types are not equal. Okay, so a whole bunch of different ways to perform different code depending upon different conditions. And now let's come in and talk about switch statements. Now, a switch statement's basically going to be used whenever you have a limited number of potential options for a value. So let's say we're going to be checking here the value of age, and how we would check that is just by going switch and then age. Then what we're going to do is do something like case, which means in case the value of age is equal to 6, then we want to go and do something. And in this situation, what we would do is come in here and say something like go to kindergarten. Then if we wanted to jump outside of the break statement or switch statement, which means we no longer want to check any other values, we would type in break right like that. Another thing we could do is we could check 2 potential values. So we could say if age is equal to 5 or 6, then we want to execute this code. And of course we could come in here and do as many of these as we would like. So we'll say something like case 7, and in this situation we'll say something like go to first grade, and then end that with break. And then finally, after we go through all the potential possible values for age, if we wanted to perform a default calculation, if nothing else matches, we would just type in default like this, document right, and then we could just tell them something like subtract 5 from your age or something like that. And if we execute this, you can see right there that go to kindergarten pops up. Another way to perform different conditions is something called the ternary operator, and basically the way it operates is you're going to have a condition followed by a question mark, and if that condition is true, you're going to assign the value of whatever this guy is. Otherwise, you're going to assign whatever the value of this is. So why don't we go in here and just create one? It makes a lot more sense. So let's say we wanted to find out, can I vote? We're going to assign either this value to can I vote or this value to can I vote, depending upon this condition. So we'll say something like age is greater than or equal to 18, and then throw in a question mark, and it will be assigned the value of true if it is true, if that condition is true. Otherwise, it'll get the value of false. And we could print that out, but there's really no point. You can go ahead and do that on your own. So that is how we work with conditional operators. Now let's jump over and take a look at looping. Now, looping is going to be used anytime you want to perform a calculation a certain number of times as long as a condition is true. And the first looping tool we're going to talk about is the while loop. So let's go and create a variable called I and give it a value of 1. And this is what the while loop that looks like. So we're going to say something like, we're going to continue to execute the code inside of our while loop as long as I is less than or equal to 10. Throw our curly brackets inside of there. And in this situation, we're going to come in and we're just going to print the value of I. And then we are going to increment the value of I. And there we are. And you can see right there, it prints out the values 1 through 10. One thing that's going to differentiate our while loop from our other loops is you have to create this value that is going to increment as long as the loop continues to cycle. And of course, you're going to have to find some way to increment that. Otherwise, you're going to get what's called an infinite loop. Another similar type of looping structure is the do while loop. And you're going to use that anytime you must go through a loop at least once. And the way that this is structured is you go do, and then you would go while, put the while part after here. And let's create a guessing game. We'll say something like while the value of guess is not equal to 15. We want to continue cycling through this guy. So we're going to come in here and we're going to ask them to guess what our number is. And let's open up a prompt so we can ask them what that value is. Guess number between 1 and 20. And then afterwards, if they guess the value, we will then come in and alert them to that. You guessed 15. Now we're going to be able to come in here, reload this. You're going to see, guess a number between 1 and 20. And if we type in 12 and hit OK, it's going to ask us again. Otherwise, if we type in 15, you guessed it, 15 pops up on the screen. So that's the difference between while as well as do while. Now let's jump over and take a look at for loops. Now basically our for loop is going to be 100% self-contained, which means instead of having the value outside of the loop like we saw with the while loop, we're going to put everything inside. So we can say something like j is equal to 0, and then put our condition inside of here as well. So we'll say as long as j is a value that's less than or equal to 20, we're going to continue to cycle through this. We're going to increment the value of j like that. And then let's perform a couple different things depending upon different conditions inside of here as well, just to back up and review how conditions work. So we'll say something like if j, the value of j, modulus 2 is equal to 0, then we want to perform different calculations. And basically what this is going to allow us to do is check if the value of j is an even number or not, because a modulus of 2 is going to come back as 0 if it's even. And if it is, we want to continue the loop. Basically what continue means is we want to stop executing everything else that follows in the for loop, jump up here, increment the value of j, and then continue on with the looping structure. There's another way we can stop execution for a for loop. We could do this with while loops and do whiles as well. We could come in and say if j is equal to 15, for example, then we want to break out of the looping structure altogether. What that says is we want to jump completely out of here and perform whatever execution comes down here after the for loop. Otherwise, we're going to come in here and just print out the values of j. And if we execute this guy, you're going to see that it only prints out our odd numbers like this. And instead of following this rule right here and printing the whole way up to 20, it instead hits this guy right here, which has a value of 15, and jumps out of the loop altogether. Another type of for loop that we have available, and of course all this code is available in the description, so go ahead and get that if you'd like. Let's come in here and create a customer. And what we can do here is use key-valued pairs, where the key in this situation is going to be name. We'll get more into the specifics of this as the tutorial comes on, but I just wanted to show you another way of using a for type of loop. Then we have address like this, and 1, 2, 3 main. And then finally we'll go and create another one called balance, and let's say it's $50.50. What we're going to be able to do is cycle through these enumerable properties of an object. Like I said, we'll get more into objects here later on. And to do so, we'd use what is called the for in loop. So we'll be able to go k in customer. It's going to be our keys. Throw in a document right, and then if we want to reference different parts of the customer, we're just going to throw our value of k inside of there. And if we reload this, you can see that it prints out all the different values that we have it stored inside of there. So that's how the for in block works. Now let's go and take a look at arrays. Now an array can actually hold multiple different values of multiple different data types, and arrays in JavaScript anyway are variable in size, so you'll be able to store multiple different values inside of here without defining a size. So let's say we want to do something like put some information about Tom Smith inside of here. We can keep adding information, and there we go. So Tom Smith lives at 123 Main, and he has a $120 balance. Let's go and work a little bit more with this. We're going to also be able to come in here and access different values. So let's say that we wanted to get the value of the first index inside of our array, and an index is basically just boxes inside of boxes. So there's one box and there's another box, and this is going to have the index of 0, this is going to have the index of 1, and so forth and so on.